Hello everyone and welcome back to World Warplanes, and today we're going to take a look at the Tier 8 American Premium Heavy Fighter, the P-82B Twin Mustang. Recently World of Warplanes did sell this plane and I caved. This is like the first premium that I've actually put money into the game to buy, but I really wanted to fly this plane. After seeing what it could do, and seeing the stats, I really wanted to fly this plane. So that right there should tell you, hey, maybe this is a good plane because I'm actually willing to put money into the game to get it. It really is that good. Um, at least that's when I was looking at it initially. It looked good enough for me to want to buy it. So this actually is not the only Tier 8 American Heavy Fighter Premium. There's also the XP-58, but this is unique. This one was designed to be put into uh, the Refer a Friend program, but quite frankly, I don't think many people are going to even want to join this game in the first place, and they may have just scrapped that system altogether. And because that system was either heavily delayed or was scrapped altogether, this plane was just released in a way that we could buy it. The one cool thing about the package that I got with this plane was it actually came with two other premiums as well for no additional cost. Not really. And because of that, I figured it was actually worth it for the price. You get the Mustang 1A, which I did not have, and everyone says it's just the best thing in the world. But you also get another British premium Mustang, the Mustang Mark 1. And I did not know this thing even existed in the files. People told me that this was in the game for before update 2.0, but I did not know that. So for me, I've never ever seen anyone fly the Mustang Mark 1. I thought it was a pretty rare aircraft that I may not be able to get ever anyway. So I did pick up the bundle for this plane and the Mustang, the twin Mustang, because it did seem like a pretty good bundle. Value wise, it was a pretty good value for your money. Um, I still can't believe I bought the package, but it was a good package. Everyone says this plane is really bad. I actually have not flown it yet. It does get 8 machine guns. That is a lot of machine guns. That's a lot of firepower. But you get four 7.62s and four 50 cals. But you're only at tier 6, so I can't imagine it's going to be that bad. The nice thing about the Mustang 1A is that you get 420 mil machine or 420 mil guns. Um, so yeah, I mean that's a thing that happened. But anyway, let's go back to the twin Mustang. This plane had to be special. It had to be truly unique, truly special for me to want to buy it. And I can reassuredly say this plane is definitely unique. And if you don't have it, it would be a good pickup. It's not even the other Tier 8 American Heavy Fighter also has this weird like setup where you've got like a hollow or an empty middle. I don't know what that is. A double wing, I guess. Um, like the XP-58 also has that. I don't know how to describe it, what it's called, but you see how like in the back there's a whole empty section. Those empty sections, planes with that, like the 109Z, the XP-58, now this twin Mustang, they're generally pretty difficult to hit. Their hit registration and hitbox, the shells go right through the back of it. Well, you don't take any damage, so it can actually be kind of difficult to hit these kind of planes. I've kind of gotten used to it, so I don't usually have that much of an issue anyway, but it is there. I'm not really going to go over the history. I want to just focus on the review of the actual aircraft, so we're not going to worry about that. But this plane's a doozy, so strap yourselves in because you're going to be in for a ride. And before we start, can we just take a moment to appreciate the looks? This plane looks amazing, right? And especially with the nose art that it came with, it makes this plane look truly special. Um, yeah, and while I get everything set up, I am currently still sick. When I made the Goblin review, that was about a month and a half ago that I made the review, and I'm still sick from that actually. So that's an issue. Um, but yeah, I'm still sick from it. In I've been sick for about a month and a half. I don't know if it's ever gonna go away. It's a long sickness. Almost everyone in my family has it right now, and we just can't get rid of it. I have no idea why it's so bad right now, but whatever we got, it's not a common cold, and it's driving me insane. Which kind of has been limiting the amount of videos that I can even create. I wanted to release the Goblin video, but I had to wait for college to start back up so I could make the video on it or release the video because if you guys know me, my internet speed is terrible, so I really can't do it at home. It would take several days to upload. So anyway, that's what we're doing. And here's the stats. So I've pulled up a few different aircraft. I pulled up the XP-58 because it looks similar to the twin Mustang. I pulled up the 262 for its legendary speed so we can see how it compares to one of the fastest planes of the tier. I pulled up the Pancake because the Pancake is known for being one of the most maneuverable heavy fighters at the tier. And I also brought up the DO335 because it is my previous or current Tier 8 heavy or Tier 8 premium that I enjoyed the most. Um, I've played a crap ton of battles in the DO335 to the point where I have 6 air markings and 6 bomb markings on it. So, needless to say, it is a fun aircraft, and I've gotten really good at the DO335. So if this P-82B is going to be good, it's going to have to compete with my DO335. And we're going to see in a minute whether that's possible or not. So straight off the bat, we're going to take a look at the gun armament. And that's where this plane is going to blow your socks off if you did not know about it. This plane gets a total of 14 50 cal machine guns. Yes, you heard that correct. 14 50 cal machine guns. The only plane in the game that has anywhere close to the amount of machine guns is the XP-75, and the XP-75 is a tier lower, and it has 10 50 cal machine guns. This one gets 4 50 cal machine guns more than that, and if we take a look at it, I'm pretty sure these two 50 cals are the same. Just to make sure, though, indeed, yes, the 50 cals are the same. And then if I come over to the XP-75, let's just see if it has the same machine guns as uh, the P-82B. If I can find them. Alright, here we go. So no, the P-8, okay. The one on the right is the P-82B. The one on the left is the XP-75. So the XP-75 does get 10 machine guns, but they have less damage per second, or less DPS. They have a slower rate of fire, and they have a lower effective range. So not only are you gaining 4 additional machine guns than the XP-75, you are gaining better tier for tier machine guns than the XP-75. Yeah, that's a lot of firepower. Now, it must be said, they are 50 cal machine guns. You know, they're not gonna set the world on fire. I mean, they will set a lot of fires, but they're not gonna set the world on fire. You get what I'm trying to say. The 50 cal machine guns are good. You know, they're better than the XP-75 machine guns, which is good. But 50 cal machine guns are known for two different things. One, they have ridiculous sustained fire. They do not overheat quickly, and they can just basically keep the trigger down forever. But as a trade off, they do take forever to cool down. But when you're doing that much damage and you really don't have to worry about your guns overheating in the first place, it's not generally an issue. Unless you're fighting at several high health targets, rapid fire, then your guns may overheat, but it really is generally not an issue. And the second thing to note with 50 cal machine guns is the optimal firing distance is abysmal. If we're looking at this, it's less than 2,000 feet. 1772 feet for optimal distance firing range. That's abysmal, which is brings me to one of the biggest downsides of the plane. Yes, you do get 14 machine guns, but you have to get close to the target in order for this plane's guns to actually mean anything at all. If you're not close to the target, they aren't going to be doing any damage. So you do have to keep that in mind. Cumulative damage is 728, which is pretty decent. If we're going to take a look at the other ones, I mean, the Pancake gets 420 mils, and those are really good guns. The 420 mils are good guns, and if you want to look at it, I actually think that is fairly true. The firepower of the P-82B and the XF5U are generally comparable. I feel like the 20 mils are very good, but the problem with the 20 mils is they do overheat very quickly. The P-82B, you can hold the trigger down for a longer extended period of time without the guns overheating, and on top of that, their cumulative damage per second is still higher than the Pancake. So there is a trade-off though, because the Pancake does have better range on the guns. But overall, I think the P-82B's firepower and the XF5U's firepower is fairly comparable. And the one difference is instead of having to let your guns cool down all the time, you can just hold the trigger down and you're getting you get better Pancake firepower for an extended period of time, with a higher chance of setting planes on fire due to having 14 machine guns. If we compare that to the 262, the 262 is known for having incredible airspeed and temperamental guns, where the guns have a ridiculous potential damage, but they overheat quickly and you can't be on your target for very long. But if you do get those guns to hit, they are devastating. But I would argue so are the Twin Mustangs guns. If you get 14 machine guns targeting a plane, you're gonna feel it. You're gonna hurt. XP-58, again, very, very good firepower on that plane. You get a 37 mil, and you get 4 37 mil guns. Yeah, that's a lot of firepower. But they do overheat quickly. But the rate in the hub, the rate in the nose, so you're doing lots of damage. And the DO-335, one of the biggest downsides of the DO-335 is the firepower. You get 215 mils and 130 mil. So yeah, that is very little damage output. And on top of that, you have to give a lot of lead on the guns in order for them to be effective. But the range on the guns is actually pretty decent, and that kind of makes up for it in some ways because you can stay outside the firing range of the tail gunners of bombers and still be doing damage to them and knocking them out. That kind of ability is impressive to say the least, but exceptional to say the most. It's hard to get used to, but the benefits of the DO-335 are not necessarily the firepower. And as such, that's why I like the DO-335. It has good enough firepower, but it is still weak. It is very weak firepower, but you can make it work. So what it boils down to is you don't have the same raw firepower that planes like the 262 or XP-58 that have those massive cannons have. But in exchange, you get consistency with your guns, with the expense of firing range. They are 50 cal machine guns, and when you're playing a heavy fighter, the hardest part with machine guns is always getting into a position to use those machine guns. That's going to be the hardest part of the plane. But if you can master getting behind your opponent consistently and getting opportunities to get those guns firing, you're going to have a lot of success with this plane. You really want this plane to be as close to the target as possible. And generally, that can be pretty difficult sometimes. You want to be as close to the target as possible because more of your machine guns will be hitting and you'll just be shredding your opponents. But again, it's fairly difficult to get behind your opponents consistently and getting those machine guns to be effective for consistent amounts of time. That is the biggest downside of machine guns. But it doesn't end here. The good news does not end at just the firepower. The good news extends to the bomb and rocket layout. If we take a look at this, it has the best rating for bombs and rockets out of the entire tier. The XF5U gets two 1,000 pound bombs, but they resupply in 180 seconds. So you do lots of damage, but then that's it for 3 minutes. And yeah, that's something, right? Which in a way is a good thing because it does not promote heavy fighters from shooting ground targets, right? That pancake, it drops its bombs when it's required, when flipping a sector requires dropping or having ordnance to flip it. It's exceptional for that. And then you get your bombs dropped quickly and you get back into the action very, very, very quickly. And then you don't get distracted with having to drop more bombs right away. You can just stay focused on air-to-air combat. So the bombs and rockets on the XF5U Pancake are, I would say, very good fire or very, very good ordnance layout for the tier. The Pancake, you really can't go wrong with two 1,000 pound bombs. The 262, you don't get any ground ordnance, but you do get a whole bunch of air-to-air rockets. And so that kind of makes the 262 a bit unique. XP-58 doesn't get any ordnance, but the DO-335 gets 4 of the SD-250 bombs. They're the exact same bombs that you get on the ME-329, but as you guys know, the ME-329 only gets 2 of those bombs. You get 4 of those bombs, and with my layout, my bombs reload in 83 seconds. Stock, I'm pretty sure it's 120 seconds. But that's still better than the pancake stock, and 83 seconds to reload twice the ordnance layout of a GA. That's very, very good, and it's one of the key reasons why I like the DO-335. It's the consistent ground damage that makes it just amazing. So, that brings us to the P-82B. What does the P-82B get? Well, it gets two 500 pound bombs, which is like, you would think half the damage of an XF5U with the two 1,000 pound bombs, but it's not. If you take a look at the cumulative damage, it's less than 2,000 different than the pancake. So you're really not losing that much in terms of your ordnance bomb damage. You're really, really not losing a whole lot. And on top of that, you get 10 5-inch HVAR rockets, which does 14,400 cumulative damage. That's crazy. That's a lot of potential ground damage. That's a potential of 25,000 cumulative damage between your bombs and rockets. You are a powerhouse that outperforms a DO-335. I can't believe I'm saying that, but this plane has better ordnance capability than the DO-335. And on top of that, it has the same reload speed as the DO-335 at 128 or 120 seconds. But with my loadout, it's only 83 seconds, which we already talked about. That's incredible. That's very, very, very good. So, let's do the takeaway here. I have the same firepower. You have the firepower that's very consistent and good. It's very good for the tier. And you couple that with ordnance capability that's as good as the DO-335, which in my opinion, the whole reason you play the DO-335 is for the ordnance. That's the whole reason the DO-335 exists in the first place, is the unique ordnance layout. And you have better ordnance capability. Granted, some of its rockets and the blast radius of rockets is a little bit less, so that's where you kind of get that difference in potential damage. But generally, that makes you a lot more flexible too, right? Instead of having to drop 4 bombs, you have 10 rockets, and sometimes you can place those rockets in more strategic locations, which just makes it more flexible. So, good news for the P-82B thus far. It's got 14 machine guns, which is actually good for the tier. You know how much I hate machine guns, but when you get 14 of them, you're starting to not be terrible. And unlike the Goblin that I just reviewed, this plane actually has machine guns that work. Alright, so now we are on to survivability, which is probably the least important. I'd say it's really not that important. Here, I'll give you a quick rundown of survivability. You have more survivability than light fighters, more than multi-roles, but less than bombers and ground attack. There you go. Let's move on, because, okay, let's do a little bit more. It's actually the worst survivability of the tier. And it's a little bit more than the 262, but the 262 has speed going for it. So it can get away, pancake, and, I'm just going to breeze over it. Survivability really doesn't matter that much. You're a heavy fighter, so you're going to have more than the multi-rolls. You're going to have more than the light fighters, and that's really about it. So, yeah, let's move on to the next stat. That's really not that important. Airspeed. If we take a look at it, DO-335 is good, but not great. Chain Lightning is okay. 262 is okay. Pancake is, actually, the 262 is the best in the comparison. And the only reason the DO-335 is at 70 is probably because I increased it with some of my equipment. So the DO-335 has a lower stock airspeed than the other ones. Yeah, the Twin Mustang, though, is the lowest in the comparison. Granted, I did make a little bit of it worse with my equipment layout, but I don't think it'll make up for it significantly. Like, the most difference it could really make is a couple percent, nothing too crazy. But if we look at it, the cruise speed is lower than everything else. Yep. The boost speed is lower than everything else, barely. The boost duration, stock, it's 25 seconds. Stock, it's 25 seconds, which is still less than the DO-335 stock-wise. But yeah, it's not the worst, but not the best. Max dive speed, not the worst, but not the best. So the takeaway here is the airspeed is good, but not exceptional. And all in all, it's lower than everything else in the comparison. All in all. And it's for that reason that if you really look at it, it's really not worth it to go for an airspeed build. I've talked to other guys in my clan, and some of them said they preferred going for an all airspeed loadout because the cruise speed is really good. It maintains that low, albeit low, cruise speed for the tier, but because of the engine power and the ability to retain that airspeed, they wanted to increase the airspeed. That's up to you, but personally, by looking at the stats, I don't feel going for an all speed build is the way to go. Because if you want an all speed build, there's other planes in this comparison that will do it better. Namely the 262, but even the 335 if you want to go all speed build, which I highly don't recommend you go an all speed build on the deal with 335 because you'll lose all your maneuverability. But yeah, that's the airspeed. It's arguably the lowest on the comparison, but I'll explain why it's like that in a little bit. So just keep that in mind. Keep that little nugget in the back of your head. Airspeed is arguably the worst at the tier. Arguably. But now we move on to airspeed, or maneuverability. My bad. We're moving on to maneuverability. And if we take a look at it, the best maneuverability in this comparison is actually the DO335, which I actually surprised myself. Why is the DO335 having such good maneuverability? Well, that's just because I put equipment on it. 23% roll maneuverability. Yeah, it's roll maneuverability, and it's going toward increasing maneuverability stat, but it's roll maneuverability. It's, in the grand scheme of things, one of the least important stats in the game. It can be helpful, don't get me wrong, but generally roll speed doesn't make a big difference in the grand scheme of things. I have other maneuverability, which, yeah, why is the DO325 that maneuverable in terms of the comparison? Because I can generally not outturn a whole lot. I don't know. That's kind of surprising to me, but if we pop up the other maneuverability stats, they're generally the same. Especially if we, okay, here's probably why I am seeing it as different. If you look at the roll rate on this plane is just ridiculous compared to the rest, right? Um, but the minimum altitude optimal speed, it's really, really high. It's basically the same minimum optimal speed as the 262, which means that it doesn't slow down. It has a very high stall speed, which generally not good. And you'll know especially that stat is very useful when you want to try to make planes overshoot you. So a good tactic with the 262, if it's on your tail, is either outturn it or just slow down really, really slow. Because if you slow down, the 262 has two options. It either slows down and still overshoots you because it has a really high minimum airspeed, or it maintains its airspeed and kind of leaves you pretty quickly. If it lowers its airspeed, well, then it makes itself more vulnerable for a counterattack by you. Like once it overshoots, you can start shooting it, or it makes it vulnerable for the rest of your team. So minimum optimal speed is actually a stat. If it's underrated, but if you know that a plane has a very poor minimal optimal speed, you can take advantage of that. I'm really, really bad at that, but if you're a better pilot than me, you might be able to realize, hey, a good tactic in this situation is to make the plane with the really high minimum airspeed overshoot me. So that's an underrated stat that I don't use that often because I just don't think about it. Honestly, it's a valid tactic, but I get worried if I slow my airspeed down. Yeah, the 262 might overshoot me, but I make myself a slower moving target as well, which makes it easier for the 262 to shoot me, right? So it's a risk versus reward type of stat, honestly. The maximum optimal speed, that's the one you're really looking for. Those are some pretty good stats. Um, Pretty general. And stall speed is, holy crap, that pancake has really, really good stall speed. You can really toy with your opponents by using that. I never really noticed that, but the pancake, that's a valid tactic. That is that is a good stall speed. You can really play with your opponents with having a stall speed that low, and it makes sense actually, because historically those propellers almost acted like a helicopter blade. Um, so it would make sense to have a very, very, very low stall speed. But if we take a look at the maneuverability on the P-82B and compare it, even stock, this plane has almost double the maneuverability of the other heavy fighters in this tier. And in my opinion, that's the stat you really want to go for. That's what really sets this plane apart, is that incredible maneuverability. It's a stat that you may not realize about this plane, but that maneuverability is the difference between it's your for every plane. Whenever you get a new plane, you want to try to find what is that special characteristic that this plane has that is my go-to card to get out of trouble. And for the 262, it's the airspeed. But for this plane, it's the maneuverability. You really don't have the best airspeed, so that get out of jail free card, as you will, is your maneuverability. It's your get out of trouble situation card. And yeah, against light fighters, it's not going to be as good, but against higher tier light fighters, you could surprise them, and you could be out turning tier 9 light fighters. You can outturn, for the most part, many of the multi-rolls. I've outturned J7Ws, and I've outturned any Corsair. You can outturn a Corsair, no problem. And when you start thinking that you can outturn a J7, it's very impressive maneuverability, and it's a stat that you want to lean on. And so when we go to the equipment, that's the stat that we're really going to be focusing on. With an 11-second average turn to time, or time to turn 360 degrees, that's very good. Against other tier 8s, it might not be exceptional, but when you're doing it with tier 9 planes, that's a very good stat, and especially when you couple that with the pneumatic control assist consumable, that's good. And another reason why I want to increase the maneuverability on the P-82B is also because of the guns, right? The guns require you to get very close to your opponent in order for them to work effectively. And so if you're out turning your opponents or in a turn fight with your opponents, you're naturally going to be very close to the target. And so with that logic, with that thinking, I went with a full turn build on this plane, and it's very fun with a full turn build, let me tell you. But that's maneuverability. Um, yeah, it's good. The stall speed 112, that's not terrible, but it's not the best. Max airspeed, it's okay. It's low. And minimum airspeed is pretty high, which again is not that great. Um, but it's what you want to be looking for. And if we go to altitude performance, generally it looks like it has the lowest altitude performance, on par with the Pancake, which, again, when I was talking to my clan, they're like, oh yeah, the altitude performance really is not that bad. Are you sure about that? Have you actually looked at the stats? Because to me, the altitude performance does not look like it's good, right? Uh, and in my opinion, the altitude performance is not good. In fact, it's basically the exact same altitude performance as the Pancake. If you look at it, if you know the Pancake is known for not having the greatest altitude performance at the tier, and there's your evidence right there. Rate of climb is actually slightly better than the Pancake, so that might be a good get out of jail free card, but you're also more maneuverable than the Pancake, so just outmaneuver the Pancake and it'll be all good. which is interesting because the Pancake is generally considered one of the more maneuverable heavy fighters in the game at this tier, and you're more maneuverable by it by a significant margin. Um, so this P-82B is really an excellent heavy killer fighter. Um, a really, really good counter to heavy fighters. Very, very good. Um, and yeah, if you're looking at the service ceiling, 13,000 feet, 14,700 on the other ones. Yeah, eh, it's lower. So before we move on, here's my overall summary of the P-82B. It kind of feels like a super souped up XP-72 on steroids, right? Because you get better, or not better, you just get more machine guns than the XP-72 by a whopping, what is it, like 6 machine guns or something? I'm pretty sure the XP-72 gets 8 machine guns, so you get an extra 6 machine guns on top of that. On top of that, your ordnance layout really is quite comparable to that plane, and your maneuverability is better than it. So that's great. You have a low altitude performance, just like most of the other multi rolls, and you have an airspeed that's pretty comparable to multi roll airspeed. It's good, but it's not great, right? And you really do feel that with this plane. It feels, if you do talk to the rest of the HFAR, they do agree with me in this case. The P-82B really is a glorified, super heavy multi-roll, um, with the best aspects of a multi-roll still applied to it. And if you think of the P-82B as a multi-roll, then you will have a lot of success with this aircraft. The ordnance that ordnance capability is one of the key aspects to the aircraft and why it is so fun. And if we get rid of all these other aircraft, the aircraft that it's most comparable to is the DO-335, which, again, very interesting that they would try to make an American counterpick to the German DO-335. As you can see, the DO-335 had the best or second best maneuverability in the comparison, which I still don't really understand why, because I'd never really thought of it as very maneuverable, but it does make sense why my maneuverability builds are fun. Part of it might just be my equipment layout, but you do technically have better firepower than the DO-335, and with that better maneuverability, you can get those guns to sing a lot more frequently. The DO-335 relies more on finding targets that are moving slowly or predictable and hitting them with a faraway cannon, whereas the P-82B likes to get in close a little bit more. But both of these aircraft have the capability of flipping factories by themselves, and that's something you just don't get on any other heavy fighter. It's truly a unique and special aspect of the aircraft. It's why I really like the P-82B, because it does feel similar. It feels almost familiar, I guess is the word, to the DO-335. And I love the DO-335 because you do have the DO-35 doesn't have much, but it does have the ordnance to give it flexibility in most situations, and the P-82B has that as well. I will say this: the P-82B does not feel very special before it's specialized. Before it's specialized, it feels very, very mediocre. Uh, it's still fun because you can still get those situations where all the machine guns hit and it's just tearing things apart. But you'll get those situations where you're not hitting or you're not getting situations where you can get on opponents' tails, or you're not able to get close to an opponent, or because you're not specialized, your maneuverability really doesn't mean a whole lot, and because you don't have the greatest airspeed or altitude performance, you really can't escape. Not before you're specialized, and so this plane struggles somewhat before it's specialized. I've had my good moments, and I've had some really good games in this plane, before specialization. I've had a couple 20k games in this before specialization, so it has potential. But I also was getting lots of tier 9 battles in this plane before specialization. In fact, I counted a situation where I got 9 tier 9, or no, it was 10 tier 9 battles in a row with this plane. And this plane struggles when it's not specialized in a tier 9 battle. It really does, because machine guns require you to get close to your opponents. And because tier 9s are so much faster than tier 8 planes, it's much more difficult to get close to opponents to shoot them. And again, it's very difficult fighting tier 9 planes with this aircraft, especially if you find a 1092 that's basically this plane in but better in every way. Um, the 1092 is a direct counter to this plane. If you find a 1092, you're just going to die. But in tier 8 battles, it's very, very fun. And especially once it becomes specialized, it really does become very fun. I will mention, you want to see where the guns are placed? We have 14 machine guns. Well, where are they placed? Well, we get 6 machine guns right on the middle wing, the joining wing between the two Mustangs. And we get a gun hub that's attached to it with an additional 8 machine guns. So that's where your firepower comes from. And again, machine guns are not great, but if you situate them all right in the dead center of the aircraft like that, 14 machine guns in the dead center, oh, it's absolutely heavenly. The amount of stuff you can do with these machine guns is truly special, and we're getting found a breaking point where machine guns are actually useful. Um, I always prefer cannons over machine guns, but when you get 14 machine guns, it does make something very special. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to get the aircraft. Seeing 14 guns on a single aircraft, you can't beat that with anything in the game. And they're better machine guns than the XP-75. You get 4 guns more than the XP-75. It's crazy. But let's jump into equipment and consumables. For consumables, it's the pretty generic layout. You really want to set it up like this. You could have gone control surface trim, or yeah, emergency control system, but I prefer pneumatic control assist simply because you rely on that maneuverability as your survival in this plane. Your survival technique is not your airspeed, and so maneuverability is your go-to. So you are not the most maneuverable at the tier. You are the most maneuverable heavy fighter. But in terms of fighters and other multi-roles, you are not the most maneuverable, especially when you're facing other specialized of those types. And so in order to compete with them, you need to have a pneumatic control assist. So I think that's very important. Engine cooling, I just prefer that over pneumatic restarter. Um, so yeah, that's what I'm going to do, especially since if I'm going to be turn fighting anyway and my engine gets knocked out, who cares? For cockpit, oh, it is very interesting. You don't get any forward firing weapons, which kind of makes sense because as people were saying in HFAR, if you were able to increase the range of 50 cals, you start getting something pretty stupid. So generally speaking, almost all planes with machine guns from tier 7 and higher do not have a forward firing weapon slot because it does make machine guns better than 20 mils in that way if you were able to increase the range of the guns. I would have personally increased the firepower to make, or the rate of fire to make it even more stupid. But, but yeah, that's something that's happening. Really, Cat? Did you have to? She just jumped on my shoulder. Anyway, G suit. I went with that. Uh, you could have done firing accuracy, but I don't really see the reason to. You have all 14 guns situated in the dead center of the aircraft, and if you do marksman 1 and 2, that's good enough. The one benefit of having that is I'm pretty sure you can get the characteristic for increasing fire chance, which obviously would be helpful. But also you could do the accuracy when firing at moving targets. So if you're fighting a target that's spinning around a lot, definitely could be helpful. Um, so while you might not do the sight for the raw accuracy, you could potentially do it for the bonus characteristics given by the equipment slot. So if you choose to do that, I totally understand that. That's a very viable tactic. Um, in fact, I may try doing that at some point just to see how it goes. But currently, I'm going with the G suit to try to increase maneuverability as much as possible. And I still get the accuracy when firing at moving targets, so there's that. But again, that fire chance, that's very appetizing about the sight. So when you're setting up your plane, think about which you would prefer to have. Would you prefer to have a little bit extra maneuverability or sacrifice that little bit of extra maneuverability to gain the ability to just set your targets on fire all the time? Something very special that you could do with this aircraft. And then for the airframe, oh, the other two options, I don't think is very important. Just don't bother with them. I don't really see a benefit to doing the other two options. For this one, well, I'm going with a turn build, so my only choice is going to be the lightweight wing frame, which again is just obvious. Just do a wing frame, you won't regret it. I don't really think any of the other options is worth it. You could do a polished skin if you're going for a speed build, but I just don't see the benefit of doing a speed build. I'd much rather have a turn build because it's easier to get machine guns on targets when you have a good turn build. But that's your choice. If you want to go a speed build, I've talked to several HFAR clansmen that have had a lot of success with a speed build, so it's up to you. If we take a look at the next one, we're going to do maneuverability, so lightweight power unit. You can do engine thrust if you're going for a speed build, and I went with the boost modification because you do get some of the best speed amounts at the tier. You still get 21 seconds of boost with the setup, and getting that 15% engine cooldown rate, it's very, very good. And on top of that, you get much more acceleration with your boost and max speed with the boost. And because I went with boost, the engine cooling becomes that much more effective. So when you can get like 31 seconds, 32, 33 seconds of boost with that increased efficiency, you make up for that lack of airspeed that you killed on other with the other equipment because other equipment have downsides of like airspeed. I'm pretty sure. Oh no, not that one. Was it this one? I don't know. I'm pretty sure one of the equipment slots reduces your airspeed or something, but that boost modification kind of counteracts it. So yeah, that's exciting, right? And then outboard weapon slot. This is pretty obvious. You're going to be bombing at such low altitudes anyway, so that's really not that useful. Range of rockets, the range on your rockets is like 4,500 feet. I've hit targets at that range, so eh, not really. Like no, I don't really care. Um, but if you're going for a speed build, that's where you're going to want to go with aerodynamic pylons, right? You're going to want to reduce the effective or the negative effect of the bombs and rockets, but I don't think that's actually beneficial for this plane. It's another reason why I don't think a speed build on this plane is the best. Um, because you have a 120-second reload on your bombs and rockets initially, which is good for a heavy fighter. With this amount of firepower, with its ordnance, that's a good reload on your bombs and rockets. It's like the deal with 335 before this plane was introduced, there was no competitor. There was no other heavy fighter in the game. Heck, there was very few multi-roles that had that kind of firepower. The only multi-role with that kind of bomb layout, bomb and rocket layout, that was comparable to the DO 335 was the XP-72, and in my opinion, it has worse ordnance than the DO 335. So to have this heavy fighter, which basically gets the same amount of raw damage from its ordnance as the DO 335, I think the reload speed is super critical. As you can see, I got this down to 83 seconds of bomb and rocket reload. That's really, really good. That's very good. Uh, that's cutting off a whopping, what, 27 seconds of reload? Like, I'm pretty sure that's right. 27? No, it's more than that, isn't it? It's like 37 seconds. It's like 37 seconds of boost you're taking off. That's really good. You're taking off almost 40 seconds of reload, and you're knocking it down to a whopping 83 seconds. To put that into perspective, by the time you set up your bomb and rocket run and get to the next sector, after you've shot down maybe a couple of the defending threats, your bombs and rockets are ready to go again, and you can use those bombs and rockets several times throughout the battle, and it makes them very, very flexible. If you are facing a bomber or a GA, having that increased or decreased reload speed on your bombs and rockets is just so significant. Super, super significant. So, in my opinion, that's by far the most important setup because you could do where it reduces the effectiveness on your speed, but then you're still stuck with a 120-second reload on your bombs and rockets. And at that point, is it even worth it having the bombs and rockets? Because, I mean, it's still good, but you're not really going to take the full advantage of that key bonus, the key benefit of the aircraft. This plane without the bombs and rockets would be pretty viable, in my opinion. But having those bombs and rockets is just as important as having 14 machine guns because it allows you to take sectors that you otherwise would kind of struggle to take, honestly. And you can do it consistently too, because you can do 25,000 cumulative damage between all your ordnance. That is significant. You can really, really make advantage of that. So all in all, we're gonna jump to the pilot real quick to show you what I'm doing. I almost have a 12-point pilot in this plane. Excellent. My pirate pilot, he goes in basically everything. Because I was flying this plane a lot, I actually reset the skills. Uh, yeah, reset the skills, which again, you don't have, if you're resetting or you're retraining for the plane, you have to do like a battle to get it back up to 100%. But a premium plane, you don't need to do that. So you don't have to retrain it. You can just reset your skills, and there's no penalty to it. You pay 440,000 credits, which again, I don't have any more use for credits at the moment anyway, for the most part. So that's no problem to me whatsoever. You get those skills back, you plop them in, and you're good. So if I ever wanted to go back and fly the Pirate again, I could just reset them for another 500,000 credits, and no problem. The only reason I reset it was because the Pirate doesn't have ordnance. So my crew layout was set up not to have ordnance, but you really, really want to have Demolition Expert. With the amount of ordnance that you have, getting Demolition Expert is vitally important to making this plane very, very powerful. Additionally, I went Marksman 1 and 2, not because I need more accuracy, but because of the dispersion of forward firing weapons is 5 reduces it by 5%, but that's actually not the whole reason. Like, that's not the key aspect of Marksman 2 that makes it so powerful. The key aspect of Marksman 2 that makes it so powerful is it increases accuracy of firing at actively maneuvering targets by a whopping 10%. That benefit is the whole reason why Marksman 2 is so beneficial in the first place. Um, so those are the first three skills you're going to go for. Don't ask questions. You want those three skills as soon as possible. They're the most important. Demolition Expert is the first skill you go for. Marksman 2 is the second or third skill you go for. And then after that, we're doing a maneuverability build. And the maneuverability build requires you to try to increase your maneuverability as much as possible. So that means we're going to do Aerodynamics Expert and we're going to do Aerobatics Expert. Those two skills are excellent for this build. I will not do Engine Guru 1 or 2 in any case. And if I manage to get another 3 skills, Resilience is going to be the skill that we're going to be putting on. I don't really care for Rocketeer. I have gotten a couple rocket kills with this aircraft, but eh. If you have a couple one-offs, you want to cut, like if you have a random skill point that you can't use, put it on Firefighter. Extinguishes fire quickly. That's always beneficial. One thing before we do go into the battle is I have heard complaints about the rockets on this aircraft. When I'm talking to other HVAR members, the biggest complaint I hear about this aircraft is the rockets, which is interesting to me. Uh, but do look at how this plane is set out. Your bombs and rockets are on the outboard wings, and because you have a double fuselage, your normal like fuselage in the middle, like the nose fuselage, it's much, 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 much wider than other aircraft. For example, the DO-335. If we take a look at that, your fuselage is a very, very narrow space. You have a comparatively small engine, but it's because you can have two engines on the DO-335, which gives the fuselage a very narrow, or the nose of the aircraft very narrow, and so your bombs are closer to the center of mass. And because the bombs are closer to the center of mass, actually, I'm pretty sure, yep, the DO-335, you get two bombs on the outboard, which I guess the H5 would consider less accurate bombs. But you also get two critically accurate bombs because two of them are situated in the fuselage, in the center of the wing. The center of mass is exactly where the extra two bombs go. And so it makes the bombs extraordinarily accurate. Uh, the P-82B does not have that. If we go like that, the bombs are on the DO-335 are about here on the plane and here on the plane. So you get two bombs here, one bomb here, one bomb here on the DO-335. This plane extends that almost twice the amount, so it goes out almost twice the amount. Why am I making a big deal about this? Well, because it actually does have an impact on the plane. When you drop your bombs and rockets, having those bombs and rockets as far out on the wings as they are can make them less accurate. If you're dropping the right bomb, your bomb might hit a little bit closer to the right. If you drop your left bomb, it might hit the target a little bit closer to the left. And same with your rockets, because you're going to fire one rocket on the right, one on the left, one on the right, one on the left, or vice versa. It might be left, right, but you get the idea. That's how the rockets are fired. And the reason they're fired like that is to keep the center of mass in the center of the plane, right? You don't want to have an uneven amount of weight distribution on the aircraft. Because then that makes it very difficult to control the plane. It'll be either, without doing anything on the controls, it'll either yaw to the left or yaw to the right. I think that's the right word. Maybe it's rolls to the left, rolls to the right. I don't know. You get the idea. It'll move to the left or it'll drift to the right because the center of mass is no longer in the center of the aircraft. So the reason why I'm making a big deal about this is because the bombs might not hit exactly where you want them to, and same with the rockets. The rockets, a lot of HVAR has been saying that the rockets are unpredictable. They don't go to the target where you think they should go. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I have not actually noticed this problem. I fire enough rockets that I don't care if they're not super accurate anyway, because rockets generally are not as useful. If you know me, a lot of my strategy revolves around shoot a couple rockets off to soften up the largest target at the sector, and then use my bomb to finish it off. And I can do that to two of the key targets at the sector. So I fire off like 5 rockets and 1 bomb and destroy it. Fire off 5 rockets, 1 bomb, and destroy it. If it's a garrison, it might be a little bit different story. I could do like 3 rockets at any of the air defense AA guns and basically destroy it. Um, but I like to use the rockets to soften up the target, and then that way it makes sure that my bomb destroys it. But that's that. Also, yeah, never mind. I'm not going to look at that. The bombs are pretty comparable to the DO335, but I just wanted to mention that because, yes, you do get good ordnance, but because it's so far on the sides of the aircraft, there have been a lot of complaints about how the bombs and rockets are dropped, which is something I just find interesting because I personally really haven't noticed it. I really haven't had a big issue with it. Also, here we go. Yep, the bombs in the DO335, as expected, are slightly better than the P-82B, but the blast radius is still the same. And a very excellent, very reasonable 246 feet of blast radius. That's very good. The damage is just a little bit better, but again, you make that up for in your rocket capacity, so it's all good. And with that being said, wow, that was a long review. But it is now time to move on to the replay. This replay was taken a couple days ago, um, but my goal with the replay was to get a 20k game, and I was fine with Righto. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the replay. Before we jump into the replay, though, this plane does have the potential to get a 25, 26, 27,000 personal point game. In fact, I'm sure as I play this plane more and become more familiar with it and learn the absolute limits of the aircraft and really become one with the aircraft, I am pretty sure I can get a 27k game with it. It has that potential. It has the potential to get those ridiculous games. I just haven't gotten it yet. So do keep that in mind. If I do get a ridiculous game like that, I may send it into VBAT or potentially Slay to have them do it. But I just wanted to get a review out with a 20k game. And I hope you guys enjoyed. This plane is very fun if you haven't gotten it but are considering getting it. Currently, it's not available in the store, but if it ever does come available in the store again, you could do worse than pick up this aircraft. It's very fun. I enjoyed this plane a lot. Regardless of having machine guns, I feel like it's more flexible than the DO335, which is just saying a lot because I really enjoy the DO335. But this plane, while I still don't think I prefer it to the DO335, I think I like it as much as the DO335 because of that sector flipping capability. Um, and I think I'll play it uh, a lot more than I was expecting because it's just a fun aircraft. All right, enough rambling. Let's move on to the replay. All right, everyone, and welcome to the replay. Merry Christmas. I know I haven't said that. I know it's going to be a little bit late. It's not going to be Christmas or New Year's anymore when I release this video. Um, but it's still Christmas break for me. So I'm going to say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year for those that haven't. But also, here's the little gift. This replay is not actually a World of Warplanes file replay. It is a replay that I recorded with my own software. So it should have a little bit higher quality. Where I'm aiming is actually going to be where I'm aiming. So do keep that in mind when you're watching this video. This is my actual view, and when I zoom in to shoot at targets, you'll just see. And just wait for situations like that. You'll see a couple of those situations where if you get those guns on target, um, you'll just melt opponents. They'll absolutely be eviscerated from the entire world. Their hit points will just evaporate and give you personal points. So their hit points get converted to personal points instantly. Tempest, their fairly durable multi-roll just got absolutely ruined by these guns. And the maneuverability means that I think I can turn fight with a Spitfire. Granted, it's a bot, but I know that my bot allies will attack him at some point, and he's going to break off, and bam, this is going to be my opportunity. That was all planned. I knew I couldn't quite outturn the Spitfire, but the fact that I had the audacity to even think about turn fighting with him should show you the turn capability of this aircraft. I knew he could still outturn me, but I knew it wasn't by much. And waiting long enough for him to break off due to my allies shooting at him, I knew would happen, and so that was actually planned. That was intentional. This plane has potential like I've never seen before. The one problem with this replay actually is I don't think I show off the full potential of the Ordnance capability. I'm sorry. I know I will show it at some point in the replay. I know I do use them to take a couple sectors. Um, but I don't use it as much as I have been in other replays solely because I'm trying to get that 20k game match, which means I'm going to be spawn camping. I'm going to be kind of cheesy. I'm going to do everything in my power to get a really good score and to make this replay entertaining to watch. We found the Spitfire again. I know he's going to outturn me, but hopefully the air defense may help me, but I'm outside the zone at this point, so it's going to be a little bit tricky. Okay, he's going to outturn me. I'm not going to try to turn fight with him anymore, so I'm just going to break away and see if I can do something. Rido's flying a Tu-10, and he just killed the Spitfire with his front guns. Yep, because Tu-10 is actually very fun. I haven't actually reviewed the aircraft, but those Soviet bombers, I hated them for a while, but once you get to know them, they are very, very fun indeed. They take a very special playstyle, though. I-250, he's going to be a real pain this replay. I underestimate the I-250 on several occasions, and he teaches me a lesson for it. So yeah, we're going to go see what we can do against this B-32, and do know it. I have to get to about 1,800 feet, 2,000 feet before I can even open fire and hit the target. And that's the biggest downside of this aircraft is the range of the guns. But if you can get past the range of the guns and kind of adapt to it and learn how to use the range of the guns, but not just use the range of the guns, you have to learn how to fly the aircraft in such a way that you put yourself into an advantageous location, advantageous situation, to get those guns in those situations where you're close enough to make use of them. Because of that short range, you have to figure out ways to get close to targets, because when you go close to targets, you do stuff like that. They just get evaporated. And man, this plane's so fun. And I don't think I quite mentioned it in the review, but this plane, because it has a lower stall speed than some of the other heavy fighters, and just a lower overall airspeed, it's actually beneficial to this plane to go against bomber flights, because you can slow down to the point where you're not going to overshoot them, so you can just stay behind the bomber flight indefinitely. You're not going to stall either, and you can basically go the same speed as the bomber flight, which is very unique for a heavy fighter. Most heavy fighters, you'll have to overshoot the bomber flight or stall out in the process. This plane comfortably stays behind a bomber flight, and because the guns never overheat, I mean, they do overheat. I have made them overheat, but you have to work to make them overheat. And because of that, you still have good DPS because you have 14 machine guns. This plane is the best plane at the tier, and really one of the best planes in the game, tier for tier, to take on bomber flights. It is the Bomber Killer. You can evaporate a B-32 hit points like it's nothing, solely because you just never overheat. Um, so yeah, this plane, the lower airspeed, if you know how to use it to your advantage, you really can. And here's the I-250. He's going to teach me how to not ignore him. But Raito took him out, and thankfully I did not die. But I will die here in a second. But not before I can take out the Su-10. Nope, not quite. I lied. Couldn't quite kill him. And tragic news here, we just lost the airfield as well. Um, but the score is so heavily skewed in our favor. So, yeah, it's not a big deal. And I'm very sorry. I just realized this replay has no um, ordnance dropping action. So, what I'll do instead, I'll still use this replay and I'll still put it in the review. Um, but I will try to get another very good battle with this P-82B soon, and then just do a standoff uh, video of the replay, because I think it'll be very good. Because the Ordnance is very good. If you want to know how the Ordnance feels, go look back at my DO335 videos, because the amount of damage you can do with this Ordnance is practically the exact same as the DO335. Um, and as such, it's looking back in the DO335 is going to show you how this plane compares. We're on 109 TL, and yes, that's a multi-roll, but we can outturn him for days. There's nothing he can do about it. We will outturn him, and we outspeed him. So he's just going to die. And that's the power of this plane. It really is flexible. And that's the key aspect. And yeah, its altitude performance isn't super, but it's good enough, right? It's good enough. You don't really want to be at this altitude. This altitude's a little bit too high for it, but because you have the boost to get up very high, you can make it work. Which is also why engine cooling is so powerful, and the boost equipment is very helpful. Getting that speed, using the boost to get you to altitudes you're not supposed to be at, is helpful for taking out the high flying bombers, but you really don't want to be dogfighting heavy fighters at high altitude, because generally speaking, most of the heavy fighters are going to outperform you at those altitudes. So we get a whole plethora of medals, including Hero of the Sky. Very, very fun battle. And this is not the only 20k game I've had. I have had a couple 20k games while grinding for specialization, which should show you that the potential of this aircraft with specialization is even greater. And getting those high 25, 26, 27k games is absolutely within the realm of possibility. So do keep that in mind. I promise you, I will get one of those games one day, and I will feature it on this channel, because I know it can happen. You have to get those perfect situations where it's a super even game, though, and you're not targeted very frequently with a lot of bots. If you can get that perfect setup, perfect situation, I know a 20-something K game is going to happen. But anyway, we get a whole host of medals, 264,000 credits. That ain't bad. 22,000 experience. And if we take a look at the crew experience, we got 50,000 crew experience. That is without a premium account. That is without any boosters. But that is with the battle training boost, or broken mission, where it gets ×5 for basically everything. Well, with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.